You ready? Okay. Notice is hereby given of the regular meeting of the Board of Education of the Town of Westfield in the County of Union, New Jersey at 6:15 on the evening of Tuesday, March 15th, 2022 in Cafeteria B of Westfield High School, 550 Dorian Road, Westfield, New Jersey. The board will move immediately into private session to discuss matters rendered confidential by state and federal law, including legal matters. The public portion of the meeting will resume at 7 p.m. The purpose of the meeting is to transact the regular business of the board and to transact any other business to come properly before the board. This is to advise the general public and to instruct that it be recorded into the minutes that in compliance with Chapter 231 of the Public Laws of 1975, entitled the Open Public Meetings Act, the Westfield School Board on Thursday, March 10th, 2022, caused to be posted at the office of the Board of Education located at 302 Elm Street, Westfield, New Jersey, and delivered to the Westfield Leader, the Star Ledger, the Westfield Library, Town Clerk of Westfield, Tap Into Westfield, and Patch.com, a meeting notice setting forth the time, date, and location of this meeting. Dana, can I have a roll call?
Sahar Aziz.
Here.
Rob Bonaccio.
Here.
Mike Beelan.
Here.
Brendan Galligan.
Here.
Leila Morelli.
Here.
Sonal Patel.
Here.
Amy Root.
Here.
Kristen Sonic Schmeltz.
Here.
Mary Wickens.
Here.
Thank you. Sahar, can you lead us in the flag salute? I ask the board to approve the following resolution. Resolved that the Board of Education move into private session for the purpose of discussing matters rendered confidential by state and federal law, including legal matters, and be it further resolved that any discussion held by the board which need not remain confidential, and the results of the discussion will be made public as soon as practicable. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Amy. All in favor? Aye. We are in private session.
done talking, I turn it off.
All right, we thank you guys for bearing with us while we were in private session. We are now back in public session, and we'll start with announcements. Mary, do you have an announcement?
Okay. Prevention Links, in collaboration with the Union County Youth Services Commission, presents Parents Don't Get Vaped In, a virtual learning opportunity on Wednesday, March 30th to address the vaping epidemic in New Jersey and the newest trends in youth tobacco use and vaping. To receive a link to the virtual event, visit the Community Flyers page on the district and school websites, where more information is posted under Health and Welfare.
Thank you, Mary. Sonal?
In lieu of its annual Awareness Expo, the PTC Special Education Committee is hosting Meaningful March, a series of 3 virtual presentations focused on special education-related topics that polled as of high interest in a recent survey. The first virtual forum, Learning Disabilities, was held on March 9th. On March 23rd, the topic will be Special Education Rights and Classifications, and on March 30th, the discussion will focus on understanding challenging behaviors. Additional information will be shared soon. Email Westfield specialedparents@gmail.com with questions.
Thank you, Sonal. Layla?
The Westfield High School cast and crew of Mamma Mia are busy preparing to take the stage this week for the popular spring musical, with performances this Thursday, March 17th, Friday, March 18th, and Saturday, March 19th, all beginning at 7:30 p.m. in the Westfield High School auditorium. Visit whstd.booktix.com to purchase tickets. Tickets will not be available at the door. You don't want to miss this smash hit musical based on the songs of the 1970s Swedish pop group ABBA.
Thank you, Layla. Amy?
If you've been keeping up with the Westfield High School athletics, you know that our winter sports teams are having one of the most successful seasons in quite a while. They've captured national, state, and sectional titles, and the excitement isn't over. We look forward to celebrating all of these amazing student athletes at our meetings on April 5th and April 26th.
Thank you, Amy. Rob?
The Rotary Club of Westfield is accepting nominations for the 30th Annual Charles Philhauer Fellowship Award, which recognizes an outstanding full-time elementary teacher each year. The deadline to submit a nomination is April 1st, 2022. More information, including the online nomination form, is posted under Recent News on the district and school websites, in PTO newsletters, and on district social media.
Thank you, Rob. Kristen?
As the first in its Spotlight on Education webinar series, the Westfield Public School District is hosting a webinar on Holocaust education on Monday, March 21st, 2022 from 7 to 8 p.m. More information, including the online registration form, is posted under Recent News on the district and school websites, in the PTO newsletters, and on the district's social media. Registrants will receive a link to the webinar via email this Friday, March 18th.
Thank you, Kristen. Mike?
March is Youth Art Month. Paintings, drawings, and sculptures designed by more than 300 Westfield students from the Westfield Public Schools are displayed in 39 Westfield merchants as well as in the Westfield Memorial Library. Please take a moment to admire our students' creativity the next time you're strolling downtown Westfield during the month of March. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Sahar?
Tickets are on sale for the Roosevelt Theater Department's production of High School Musical, with performances on Thursday, March 24th at 4 p.m., and on Friday, March 25th and Saturday, March 26th at 7 p.m. The cast and crew are excited to be back on stage in front of enthusiastic live audiences. Please purchase tickets at ris.booktix.com. No tickets will be sold at the door. Additionally, save the dates for the SpongeBob musical at Edison Intermediate School on Thursday, March 31st at 4 p.m., and on Friday, April 1st and Saturday, April 2nd at 7 p.m. Additional details, including how to purchase tickets, will be shared soon. And finally, happy Women's History Month.
Thank you, Sahar. The next meeting of the Board of Education will be held at 7 p.m. next Tuesday, March 22nd, here in Cafeteria B at Westfield High School. The meeting will be live streamed via the district YouTube channel, which viewers can access by clicking on the board meeting recordings, current year, on the board tab at www.westfieldnjk12.org. The complete agenda will be available this Friday, March 18th, also on the board tab. And with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Gonzalez for the administration report.
Thank you. This evening, we're going to continue with our school district operating budget presentation series, both Dana Sullivan and myself. Before we get started, however, I would like to provide an update regarding our most recent COVID-19 mitigation strategy announcement. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to meet with our public health officials, which includes our district physician, our local health officer, and our district nursing coordinator, in order to assess the developments at the district level, at the regional level, as well as at the state level, and also to examine our experience over the last week of progressing to a mask optional environment and across our schools, which I could certainly say from walking around the schools personally, it was wonderful to see our students' smiling faces, both inside and outside, and to hear their joy. It doesn't go unnoticed that there are a number of students and adults who still have opted to wear masks, and I believe that the respect of those individuals and those decisions is evident in the same interactions. The students who are wearing masks and are not wearing masks are still engaging in thoughtful experiences in the classroom and playful experiences outside of the classroom. So I'm thrilled to see each of our schools and each of our classrooms continue to merge with greater and greater confidence towards normalcy as the warmer months approach. Needless to say, as we continue to experience each and every day, we want to ensure that our practices are going to keep our students safe, but also keep our schools open and keep our students in person learning. So yesterday was a major change for us insofar as an announcement was made and shared with the school community that really put the in-person learning at the center of the experience for all of our students who have been impacted by COVID. So those who have tested positive are required to isolate per the Department of Health regulations. But we also have individuals who may have been close contacts, and those individuals have, throughout the course of the school year, both this year and previously, have been impacted as they are identified as close contacts, and depending on the guidelines by the Department of Health, may have had to quarantine for a period of time, and that time has been adjusted over the past several months. But needless to say, the announcement yesterday has really reduce the number of individual students and staff members who may be actively identified as close contacts, as we have eliminated the contact tracing associated with COVID positive cases in our schools. So I'd like to just read the announcement that I sent out yesterday. Many of our members of our school community received it, but anyone who's in attendance who does not have a child in our school district, or anyone who's watching who does not have a child in the school district, may not be aware. Dear Westfield Public Schools community. I did say Westfield, just for the record. It sounded like another district that has nothing to do with this district, but it was Westfield. With COVID hospitalization rates extremely low, milder reported cases of illness, and the effect of warmer temperatures in reducing the number of COVID cases, I am reaching out with an update to our COVID protocols. In consultation with our public health professionals and in consideration of the above factors, effective immediately, the Westfield Public School District will no longer actively conduct contact tracing for all staff and students, except for our pre-kindergartners who are still ineligible to receive the COVID vaccine. And I do want to underscore that that was a direct recommendation by all of our health professionals in coming to this decision. Reporting positive cases. It is important that staff and families continue to perform their daily home health screening and to report positive COVID results to our school nurses. COVID positive individuals will be required to isolate per the most recent guidance, and those who self-report or identify themselves as close contacts should follow the quarantine guidelines. And as always, our school nurses and staff remain ready to help families navigate the isolation and quarantine requirements. COVID positive notification update. We also want to recognize that this change in procedure may also require an adjustment in how we interact and communicate with our families, because up until this point, if someone was a close contact, individuals would have been notified directly through contact by the nurse or the principals. So in this new transition, we wanted to assist families in monitoring for COVID symptoms, and in consideration of the schedules and student movement throughout the buildings, we're notification of COVID positive cases in our schools will be as follows. Kindergarten and elementary families will be notified if there's a positive case in their child's classroom, but given the fact that students travel extensively throughout the course of the day to different classrooms, it was more practical at the intermediate and high school level to notify families at the school level if the positive case exists, and we would specify the grade level in the respective school. So if we have multiple cases in an intermediate or high school, we would identify how many cases were at the 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th grade. We're certainly heartened to be able to take this step, but the district will continue to monitor our COVID conditions and consult with our local public health officials to keep our school community safe. So once again, I just wanted to share that as an official communication that did go out to our families, but to anyone else in the public who is interested, we have made another great step in transitioning back to a more normal experience for our staff and students. So I appreciate you taking the time to listen. Here we are now moving on to the next portion of our administrative report, and that would be our report by myself and the business administrator on the school budget development for the 22-23 school year. This was a process that has taken place administratively since the fall, as a board over the past several months, and now as the public over the past several board meetings. So what we're going to do this evening is present the preliminary budget that will be presented to the board for their approval next week, so that we could submit that document to the county for their review and approval before we present it to the board for final approval in a public budget hearing at the end of April. So if we could begin. I always like to keep the prior agendas and the prior presentations together with the current presentation, because I think it's important to know where we started in order to understand where we are today. So in the first budget presentation, we focused on a historical view of both public school funding, the allocation of resources available to schools, both through state aid as well as tax revenue, and how that has evolved over time. Moving into the second part of our budget presentation, we then took that experience and then described our current scenarios. And at the time that we presented this back at the end of February, we had the majority of our budget information entered into our budgeting software, but there are two major factors that we did not have final projections or final figures on. So in the development of the budget, just for anyone who's interested, the process generally includes reaching out to our administrators at the school and department level in order to receive their needs based upon the operation of their respective area of responsibility. So at the school level, what do you need in order to continue to provide your teachers with the necessary resources to provide instruction? And at the department level, what do we need to do in order to continue to do everything from pay bills to purchase equipment and resources necessary to keep our school building and district running? So as a result of taking all of those budgets and putting them together, there are two figures that I mentioned that we were missing. We're missing the health benefit projections from our broker to give us an indication of how much we would need to allocate in our budget in order to accommodate the health benefits of our staff. And as we mentioned, in most cases, in most presentations, I should say, we did emphasize that as a school district, the large majority of our budget is based upon the human resources, the staff, the administrators, and the teachers who are responsible for delivering education to our students each and every day. So as a result, that health benefits projection is going to account for a large portion of our expenditures. And likewise, we are still waiting to hear from the State Department of Education and from the governor's office what our allocation of state aid would be. And over the years, state aid has fluctuated, but most recently, we've been fortunate that in the past couple of years, it has either stayed flat or has increased. So at the last meeting, what we ended our presentation with was an attempt to try and provide I don't want to say an absolute worst and best case scenario, but just a scenario to illustrate how the combination of both the expenditures and the revenues would come together to illustrate the difference, illustrate the, for lack of a better term, a deficit that we would incur if we attempted to put forth a budget to this for approval that we could not completely fund via the existing revenue sources. This presentation this evening is going to now take the same presentation that we did last week, but now insert the certainties. We have received information regarding our state aid for next year, and just as a preview, it's good for us, so we're very happy about that. But we also received more refined health benefit projections for next year, which is better than we had originally anticipated, but certainly recognizes still that there's a discrepancy between how much we have budgeted and how much we have in our revenues to pay for that. So this evening, what we'll do is run through each of our revenue and expenditure tables so that you could see where we were before the adjustments, and then where we've been able to make adjustments, and then go into additional details about how we achieve that balance to get to the point where we'll be able to present to the board a balanced budget for next school year next week on March 22nd. And then we'll conclude with a brief overview of the tax rate impact of this budget on our members of the community, and the next steps to proceed through this process. So I'll ask Ms. Sullivan to get us started.
So on the revenue side, the revenue before we made any adjustments. So this revenue reflects our new state aid numbers that we did finally receive last Thursday. So obviously you can see the majority of our budget comes from local tax levy. $750,000 of our budget comes from fund balance, and that number has been consistent for the last number of years. You will, for the board members that have been here for a while, you'll recall that we previously were budgeting $1.5 million a year, and we've reduced that down to $750,000, and that's been pretty consistent. The state aid is $6.5 million. Last year we got $5.5 million, so we were happy to get an increase of $1 million. On my scenarios last week, I was showing, or 2 weeks ago, I was showing a possible increase of $500,000,
So we were happy to get the $1 million. And the reason that we're getting increases is because the state is implementing the formula at this point and trying to bring us to where we should have been for a number of years. So that's why we're getting increases, and hopefully that will continue. Extraordinary aid is, let me explain this. This is not part of our basic state aid. So extraordinary aid is an aid that we have to apply for. We apply for it, we're applying for it now for this current school year. And we won't know how much we're going to get until, sometimes it's not even July. We actually have to hold off closing our books until we get that information. So 975 is a number that we've been budgeting for that. We typically get more than that, but it's a hard number to if you overestimate, you could have a potential problem since you don't know until it's too late to actually make any reductions in your budget. So we've been consistently budgeting 975, and I'm recommending we continue to do that. We're budgeting $200,000 in interest income, which is a decrease, but that's because interest rates have gone down a lot. And our other income, which is a variety of sources, it's building rental income, it's gate receipts, it's miscellaneous type of student activity accounts, things like that, and just refunds from prior years, miscellaneous stuff that we do get during the year. So our total revenue was $116.6 million. Unfortunately, our expenditures were higher than that. So with the revised state aid and the revised health insurance figures, so you'll recall in January, we had an estimate from our broker. It was somewhere around 15% increase to our health insurance based on the first half of the year. Thankfully, we have seen better experience in the last few months. We're hoping that continues. So they did revise those numbers down to just under an 8% increase, so that certainly helped us a lot. It didn't solve our total problem, but it did help. So that combined with the additional state aid, we were now $2.3 million over cap. So while that's certainly a large number and not something we wanted to do, we were as high as 4 and possibly even 6 at one point earlier in the year.
Dana, if I could just add, I think it's important to note, because I had mentioned before, the budget requests that we received from the school and the departments were based upon their needs. I do want to emphasize that those needs were based upon maintaining really a status quo level of operations, a status quo level of delivery of services and offerings to our students. It does not include any major new initiatives. It did not include any major new advancements. Understanding where we were, we wanted to make sure that at a minimum we were able to maintain the same levels this year into next school year.
So in order to make those reductions, we had to look at what our priorities were and start there and go line by line to figure out where to be able to reduce $2.3 million. So the first and foremost, we wanted to avoid any impact on students to as much extent as we could. As Dr. Gonzalez just mentioned, we wanted to maintain existing programs and offerings, and we wanted to remain within our class size and course enrollment guidelines. So we have been able to do that, and the areas that we're looking at adjusting. So first off, we increased our fund balance. I mentioned before that it was $750,000, and we've had that for a couple of years. We are increasing that to $1 million. Because of the last couple of years, the state has allowed us to maintain 4% in fund balance ever since COVID. So we do have a little more in our fund balance than we normally do because of that. So increasing it to $1 million should be okay for the next couple of years. What you don't want to do is have your revenue stream going up and down, because then you start with a deficit the following year. So you try to keep that as steady as possible. But I do think increasing that to $1 million is going to be okay, and it'll be okay for a couple of years. So that was the revenue side that we adjusted. The other side is all on the expenditure side. So for lunch supervision, we're not necessarily changing, although lunch supervision will look different than it looks this year because of COVID, but we'll revert to pre-COVID lunch supervision, but we're going to use funds that are in the cafeteria account to pay for some of that supervision. So our food service actually makes money, which is not actually common in a lot of school districts, but we do. So the money that we have in our cafeteria account, we have been saving to use to try to make upgrades in cafeterias and whatnot, but for next year, we'll use some of that to do, to offset our costs for supervision. Transportation, everybody knows transportation has been a nightmare this year because of the bus driver shortage. So we're going to consolidate routes and eliminate routes if we can. We're looking at that very closely to see where we can be more efficient with our routes. Some of these routes are not even running because we don't have drivers anyway this year. We're looking at, and back to the 80% of our budget is staff. So we couldn't cut $2.3 million without cutting into staff, unfortunately. So there will be cuts in staffing, district, school office, instructional, and non-instructional. And although we do have cuts there that will be in instructional, the impact to students should be very minimal. So it will not be something, it may look different the way that they are learning or the program, but the programs will still exist. So the adjusted revenue is now, you see the $1 million in the fund balance. Adjusted revenue is now $116.9 million. And expenditures are also $116.9 million. And as you can see clearly, as we've stated in all of the presentations, those top two numbers account for most of your budget, which is the salaries and benefits that go with salaries. Out-of-district tuition is also another large part, 7.9%, and transportation is creeping up every year. And the other areas of the budget are much less. Supplies, materials, cleaning, and outside providers, which are also mostly special education costs. So the budget is balanced at this point. The budget is at the state mandated cap, tax levy cap, so that's the 2% increase on the tax levy. The good news is that translates to a 1% increase in the tax rate. And that's for two reasons. One reason is because your ratables have gone up in town, so that helps the tax rate to go down. And also our debt service has gone down, so our tax levy for debt service. So the combination of the two reflects only a 1% increase in the tax rate. So an average homeowner will see an increase of about $103 on school. This is all school tax alone, obviously. So the next steps, next Tuesday, we will have a meeting the board will be asked to adopt the budget. That will get submitted to the county. We will advertise the budget on April 21st in preparation for the public hearing that will be held on April 26th. At that point, the board will be asked to approve the final budget. If there are any changes between now and then from the county, they'll be reflected in that budget. And then any reductions to staff, all staff will be notified as soon as possible, but certainly before May 15th, which is our deadline to notify staff.
And just on that note, I do want to, be mindful and sensitive, in the current circumstances that we find ourselves, as much as we are, we recognize that the budget could have been worse. It is not without its own pain and challenges. We have individuals whose careers have been in this district, who have committed in this district, and who have just joined this district, who may be impacted by this. So we want to make sure we provide them with the appropriate time and opportunity for us to research the individuals who would be impacted, because for those who aren't aware, there's a lot of complexity associated with public school employment when you factor in collective bargaining agreements, tenure, seniority, and other variables that come into consideration, as well as certifications. So we will, over the next several weeks, be able to identify individuals specifically, and we'll work with our Human Resources Department, our respective bargaining units, as well as staff directly, to provide them with the appropriate notification. So again, I ask everyone to just bear with us, as you may be interested, both as an employee or as a member of the community, to know who. But more importantly, we want to be able to, support and recognize the individuals who are going to be impacted by this, and we'll give them the appropriate notification when it is time to do so. So I appreciate appreciate your patience and understanding in that. So with that, that concludes our presentation. Certainly as a presentation to the board, if there's any questions that you have or any thing that you'd like us to expand upon, we'd be more than happy to address.
Dana, I just want to thank you and your office for the countless hours of work you put to close what was a monumental budget hole. It's still a large number of cuts that are unfortunately coming, but it was a lot worse only a couple weeks ago. So I want to thank you and your office for doing everything you were able to do to close that gap, and also deliver the lowest tax rate increase we've had in at least 20 years. If anybody else on the board has questions or comments for Dana? Sorry.
So I just want to repeat a few things I've said in the past, but just to put it on the record. The first is that based on the state average of the amount spent per pupil, we spend on average $1,760 less than the state average, which comes out to approximately $10.5 million. So we spend $10.5 million less on our students, on our kids in schools than just the state average. If we compare it to Summit, which is, I think, a peer school in our county, we spend $11.8 million less. So just to think of what we could do with $11 million for our kids and for our students who will be, again, competing for the same colleges and the same jobs in the future. And then if we look at the 4.9% average tax rate that was pre-2010, we would have $40 million more to spend on our kids, which would include facilities, because we all know that we have a severe space shortage, which also affects the full-day kindergarten and special education and all kinds of things. So I just want to put that on the record, especially for the residents of Westfield. And then I wanted to ask Dr. Gonzalez, just to help us move forward. We clearly are barely maintaining what we have. And what we have is solid and it's good, but we have absolutely no room to grow, to expand, to improve, to stay up to speed with whatever is cutting edge, whether it's through curricular, through enrichment, through extracurricular, name your area of service or type of service. And so in light of the fact that we are operating on this bare bone budget year after year, I'm curious to know your perspective on, and I'm asking you to speak in generalities, but what are the types of services that we could be providing without having to kind of go into detail, that if we had less of an anemic budget and more of a healthy budget, operational budget, that we could be, help us envision what we're missing?
That's a big question. 7 months into the job, but I'll do my best. Listen, some of the things I could point to are because of the amazing staff that we have, because of the amazing teachers, because of the amazing administrators, because of the amazing support staff, we are doing amazing things with what we have. So I do want to underscore that the quality of education, the quality of creativity, and the instructional experience is certainly benefited by the investment in the human resources, by maintaining the support for our individuals who come in every day to provide those instructional experiences, or even attend to the technological facility or even social emotional needs of our students. So all of those things certainly are benefited by the status quo, by what we have. But if we had more, if we had the ability to invest more, I think what we would see is the ability to increase the staff associated with some of these things. So our ability to increase our supports for students' social emotional needs would certainly benefit by investing even more individuals into providing those supports and services to our students, versus continually sharing and creatively scheduling so that they could attend to the needs when it works into the schedule. Our ability to offer programs and offerings to students both in-house as well as individuals who we may not be able to service their needs in-house and therefore may need to identify schools or educational experiences outside of the district. If we had the means to do so in-house with staff and space, we would certainly be able to see an expansion of supporting our students, our Westfield students in our Westfield schools. I think when you then take it even further, again, as a superintendent coming into a new school district, oftentimes the question is, so what do you see or what can we do to move the district forward? Right now, I'm hesitant to go down that path too far, because if we don't have the means to do it, then it becomes even more difficult. So again, when I refer to those sorts of questions, usually the areas of focus that we look at are both our curricular offerings. So what are we doing in our sciences? What are we doing in our humanities in order to make sure that the students' learning experiences are consistent with the expectations both in the college and careers that they'll be moving into? If those experiences warrant additional resources, additional expertise, or additional spaces, we don't have the means to even go down that route or look at that further. We look at our existing extracurricular offerings, whether it be sports or visual performing arts, or again, seeing how the advent of technology has even exploded that. I mean, to offer esports opportunities for students. We have I think the ability to think outside of the box and to dream outside of the box, but until we have been able to confirm that there's money inside the box to pay for that, unfortunately, we're going to find ourselves continuing to try and do the best with what we have. And again, I just want to acknowledge all of the 800-plus staff members who have done amazing things with what we have for the benefit of our students. So I think as we continue to explore how we're going to do more for our students, I think the conversations at the board level and certainly at the community level will also seek to identify ways that we could increase the revenue or increase the opportunities for additional funding to make these things happen. I don't know if that answers your question directly, but it really speaks to there's plenty of room to dream, and I think to do so responsibly takes a concurrent conversation about how we're going to be able to see those dreams become a reality.
Thank you.
Mary, if you'd hit the mic button.
What are some ways that we could, as a board, discuss increasing the revenue? And maybe Dana has a better idea. I mean, it's all new to me with the financials. So, I mean, I know we get certain things from the state. I know there's certain expenditures every year that come every year.
Right.
But is there anything else we can do as a board to increase revenue besides just wait for what we're told we're going to get?
It's very difficult for a district like Westfield to, we have applied for grants in the past. Just a couple of years ago, we applied for what was called a COPS grant, COPS and School grant. It would have paid for SROs and some other security stuff. And we did not get that. We were considered too wealthy. We applied this year for HVAC grants, and we didn't get that either. So, So the problem is we're considered a wealthy district. So it's very difficult to get grant money. That's federal and state. We do apply whenever possible. And there's just, there's other things we can talk about down the line. But as far as revenue sources for like short term, there's really not too many sources out there. That's the reason why you see $107 million of a $116 million budget is coming from local taxes.
Right, so, it's nice to dream, it's nice to talk about what we'd like to see, but we're limited, because like everyone's saying, there's just, the money's not there. So I know that's a conversation for further down the road of how we can increase the revenue. I think it's an important conversation for us to have as a board and to have in public. But are there private ways to fundraise? Is that something that we can, I know, because I know we're considered wealthy even though our numbers show significantly otherwise. But are there fundraisers or community outreach type of programs that we can explore as well?
So there's a number of groups that already do that for
Yeah.
us. The Boosters, the Westfield Coalition for the Arts, there's certainly the PTOs, and certainly there's a number of groups that do that for us. We were also successful in having one of our students a number of years ago, an ex-student, donate to the TV studio.
Right.
It's a discussion throughout my entire career I've been having, and I've only seen it successful in a few circumstances, and it's always been for targeted projects. The problem is you're not going to be able to hire a SAC with money that's donated from somebody, because we can't continue that. So it works for some projects, mostly capital type projects, and it works usually for some particular interest that a person has, but it really doesn't help your operating budget, because we would never hire somebody based on a revenue stream that wasn't going to be consistent.
And I think that it's really also why the move to the November election was so appealing for school districts, because each year they would come to April and keep their fingers crossed that their budget would be approved and they would have the funds necessary to operate as they had planned for the coming school year. Fortunately, in the town of Westfield, we have a history of having budgets that had been approved or voted on by the community in the past approved. But that's not always a guarantee. And as the last couple of years have certainly shown, the economic stability of individual households, let alone, our country has fluctuated. So we want to make sure that when we're looking at planning for each and every school year, that we have certainty in that planning. And we don't want to hedge our bets. We don't want to assume that there's generosity of individuals that will be there each and every year, because it may not be possible. So I think always looking at, our operating budget and our standard revenues as our primary source. It doesn't mean we don't seek those additional, nor do we welcome those additional opportunities. But I think administratively and budgetarily, we look at this process as at least the core for the core programs and offerings that we offer. Everything else beyond that is certainly opportunity for enhancements or supplement by members of the community, or other opportunities that may present themselves through grants or even rebates, that are out there. And we certainly seek all those different ways to bring monies back. But each and every year we need to look at what can we put in place that we will know will be there, hope not just for September, but ideally for years to come.
Dana, do we have like a district wish list per se that's available, where our private organizations and also community members would know the type of capital projects that we would be interested in enhancing the schools with if we had access to funds?
So we don't have a wish list. We do have a 5-year plan, but we do also work pretty closely with the various groups. Usually they will come to us with a project that they would like to fund, and then we work with them very closely in developing that project. So that's usually how it works. The TV studio was the opposite. So the TV studio we had planned to renovate, and the person who wound up donating, that was an alumni from Westfield High School, was here for a graduation speech. He was the keynote speaker. And he was approached, I think it was Barbara Ball that approached him. And so he donated for that project. So it's, I don't think that we're not getting funded from people because they don't know what to fund. Certainly the connections with these various groups, they have a lot of connections and interact with people, so they would know what the projects are. It's just that donating to public school is just not, people don't do it. Their taxes are paying for the school, so it just tends not to be something that people, not like a private school.
Just to give a little perspective, I've been on the board for 6 years, and this all happened prior to my time on the board, but I was paying attention at the time. When, in the years prior to the 2% cap, the percentage increases were over 2%, but were almost always well supported by the community, which sort of feeds into that argument, that thing that we hear, that Westfield is a well-off community. It supports its school district. That was borne out year after year prior to that time. So a lot of kind of impressions and ideas about where the state should send money were kind of baked in from that prior time. And the budgets at the time were fairly lean. There wasn't a lot of fat in there to cut. So when the 2% cap got put into place, it got put in on a fairly lean budget. And a 2% increase year over year is hard to sustain given all the different moving parts of our budget. And I know that's hard for some people in the public to wrap their arms around, because, you know, our budget's been over $100 million for a while. That's a big number, and that sounds like there's got to be room to cut, to economize. But we started from a very lean position 10 years ago, 11 years ago, and we've been trying. And Dana and her office, and again, as Dr. Gonzalez said, you know, our amazing administrators and teachers have done a marvelous job of trying to be as creative as possible, as thrifty as possible, and as ingenious as possible, knowing that we were coming to a point at some point down the line when we weren't going to be able to keep going without some kind of cut. And so, unfortunately, given everything that's happened in the last year or so, it's really kind of brought us to that point, I think, a little sooner than we had hoped. But we've also been able to push it off a lot longer than I might have thought. And I don't think we're alone in this. I think every school district in New Jersey is more challenged this year than it's ever been. And if they're not at the point of making cuts, they're going to be there very soon. So it's almost an unsustainable system that was put into place. And now we are finding ourselves at that point.
Right. I mean, we're seeing everything. We're seeing the costs of everything going up. So we didn't budget to increase our supplies. So that means we're going to buy less supplies next year because the cost of the supplies are going up. Everything we're doing in maintenance is going up. So, you know, it's, even though those are areas that we didn't reduce, in essence, they are going to be reduced because we didn't increase them.
Right.
So.
And just one other comment, as someone who's been involved with the curriculum committee over the years, teachers and administrators bring ideas forward for new classes all the time, and they're great ideas. And sometimes we can implement them, but the question is always what gets cut as a result of this. If the kids will shift into this class, then something else has to reduce numbers of sections in order to make it possible for us to sustain this. So I don't want people to think that, you know, we've just been doing the same old for a long time. That's not the case at all. As I said, you know, our staff and our administrators are really good at this. But the idea of being able to expand into new areas is something that we haven't allowed ourselves the luxury of thinking about. And we need to do our community the service of perhaps considering how we can get to that point.
And to both your points about where we started off with the low spending per pupil, we've made that case to the legislators as well, to try to get some relief, because if you're starting here and somebody else is starting here, and we're going up at 2%, and they recognize that, but unfortunately there's no mechanism for us to change the budget at this point with the 2% cap. So.
Yep, you just took my comment.
Sorry.
No, but I mean, Dana and I, and Peggy Oster and a few other former board members have sat down with our legislators half a dozen times to ask for some relief in some form or another, even asking, can we go up to the state average? Which would be a huge increase for us, but would bring us in line with what every other district in the state is spending per student. And they looked at us and, sorry, the law wasn't meant for districts like Westfield, but you have to deal with it.
So as someone who is going through this process for the first time as part of the Finance Committee, I can tell you that one of the things I've been impressed with, so we can talk about piles of money, but for me the concern is what are we doing with the money we have? Because if we're not using it correctly, then I certainly don't want to give us any more if we can't figure out the right way to use what it is that we have. And I have been very impressed with especially the level of detail and planning from the various gaps that we might have had in the budget to exactly how we're going to target these cuts. And it's not just, well, let's just pick this person here or that person there. There's an entire framework for what person ultimately is. But the thought process of watching, targeting these things to class sizes. Maybe the second grade is a little bit bigger than the third grade this year. So we're going to make sure that if we have to make an adjustment, we're going to do so such that the class size and the class experience is affected as little as possible. So that when you make a change, you're not sending a class of 17 kids that you're used to a class of 30 kids, 25 kids. And one of the things that kept getting reiterated for me at the finance committees was, okay, if we have to make these changes, what is our range of ideal service for the students? What is our range of class size to ensure the best quality education on a student-to-teacher ratio basis? And each time we made those changes, we made sure that we were not only within those ranges, but comfortably, frankly, within those ranges. So I don't, as much as we are, we're running on, how do I want to put this? There really isn't fat to talk about. And had there been, I think Dana knows, and most who know me, I probably would have said it. But I have been very impressed with what I've seen. It's not just find the dollar. It's where is the dollar going to have its least negative effect if it's cut. And on the flip side of that was really dark. So on the flip side of that, I want to talk about all the positives that come out of this, right? Because I think it would be incorrect to leave here with a sense that we as a district, as faculty especially, and staff are essentially running in place. I also have the privilege of sitting on the curriculum committee with Amy, and I have been nothing short of impressed with the creativity of our teachers and those who are setting the curriculum. And one of the things I think we ought to consider, just to stay within the means where we are, is the curriculum or are the courses that we're putting forth, are they still useful, right? Are we having a section just to have a section, or are we doing it because there's a standard that we're really going to hit? And generally, I find that that's the case, and that's to the credit of Dr. Pinero and the heads of the different departments. We're not just teaching social studies to teach social studies. We're figuring out how to adjust those things to catch the trends, the technology, capture all these sorts of things. What I would be very interested to see, our state likes to do a great job in telling us what to do and giving us lots of mandates of all the things that we have to do, but they don't ever want to give us the money to do it. So that puts this district, and Dana in particular, in a bind of, well, if I have to do all of these things, how is it? There's a very good reason sometimes why we can't do better than what we're doing, and it's because we have to do some of the things that we're being told to do without being given the means with which to do it. And I would be very interested in seeing, and I know, I'm certainly not suggesting we haven't advocated in the past, but the squeaky wheel gets the grease, so to speak. And I certainly have no problem being a squeaky wheel, and I know that there are a lot of people who've been coming to our meetings who don't have that problem either. So I think what might be helpful very much is if we could take a look at what some of those mandates are. What are some of the things that are causing us the most stress and strain, the things that we're sinking money into that we either need relief from the cap from, and I think if healthcare costs have to be part of there. You don't solve a 10% gap with a 2% increase. It's just, I'm not a math major, but that one I got. I'd be very interested to see where those areas are, and maybe spend some time with the public to say, hey, look, 4 or 5 of us writing a letter is one thing, but 50 or 60 folks writing another letter is another thing. And I think we can help. We're a board of education, so I think we may help educate the public in saying, look, this is how we might be able to aid the effort of lobbying for things that, that will help us budget the right way. So that's budget joke, 2 cents deposit.
Thank you, Rob. Mike, go ahead.
Dana, I know we've discussed this in the past, but maybe just for the community. I know you calculate what the expenditures are today, but then we potentially have retirements that will occur after the budget cycle closes. What do we see as far as the impact on keeping staff once we know who is retiring?
So there's a possibility that will help us. There's also a possibility that health insurance will actually, the final renewal will be even better than it is. So it's possible that that could happen. Right now, we don't have that many notices for retirements. So right now, we're proceeding the way we are. But once we get, what may happen is we will not fill a vacancy if, it depends on where the retirement is, if it's in the right level of teacher or certification or whatever, then it may be that we cannot replace that person, and that will be one of the reductions. But at this point, we don't really have that many retirements yet that we can count on to help us.
Any other questions, comments?
I just want to, I appreciate Rob's comments, and I agree with you that the community should be engaged. I think my concern, well, I would support a two-pronged approach, where on the one hand, if we can get more money from the state, that's fantastic. It sounds like it's been quite challenging because we do have a wealthy town. At least the net, worth of our town as a whole, relative to other towns, is relatively wealthy. But unfortunately, I don't think that it's translating into a school district that's funded commensurate with that wealth. And that's not to say that we just take money just to take money. Obviously, we have a strategic plan. We would use it to invest in our kids. But my concern is the next 5 to 10 years, because let's say we can get more state aid, which we did this year, which was somewhat arbitrary.
No, it was formulaic.
Was it
The state-
formulaic? Okay.
The state passed a law 4 years ago called S2, which over 7 years phased in the state aid we should have been getting all along.
Okay.
It's still a $40-some-odd million deficit,
So we're able to predict every year? what
assuming
we're
the state
gonna get?
follows through with the formula of the law they passed. But-
If they were actually using the formula, we could predict, but they don't use the formula. So although they're phasing in the formula, they're still not using the formula because they give you all the aid in one category.
Right.
So you still can't predict it because you
Okay.
really don't know what they're doing.
And they've suspended it, they've paused, they've accelerated, they're playing games with it.
Right,
Now,
right.
and I don't know if they're using updated enrollment data because we've actually gone down in enrollment a little bit. So I
Right.
don't know if they're using that or if that's going to impact us next year. Like all of a sudden they start looking at, I don't know what they're doing.
Right.
Turn your microphone off, Dana.
But I guess my point is, I think that's a great kind of medium to long-term strategy, but I'm just really worried about next year and the year after. And my concern is, I think the teachers are doing a great job, but that's a really tough situation to be in, where every time you have a new idea, every time you want to stay at the cutting edge of something, whatever that thing is, that you're limited just because if it costs money or if we need space, we can't do it. And I would just hate for our students to suffer because we are a wealthy town. We do have wealth, and if we're only paying $103 more this year in taxes, that's not very much money to invest in our kids' public education. So anyway, I agree with you, Rob. I want to kind of have that discussion now and in the future, because ultimately it's our fellow residents of Westfield that have to decide where they want, how much money they want to put into their kids' education.
Thank you. Dana, thank you again. Dr. Gonzalez. All right, if that is it for the administration report, we'll move into committee reports. Amy, do you have a SIP report for us tonight?
Yes, well, we actually have not had a SIP meeting since our previous board meeting. Our prior SIP meeting was on February 16th, and our last board meeting was on February 22nd. So as a result, we only have one action item tonight under curriculum, and it is to approve for second reading curricula, which we approved for first reading at our last board meeting, which is 8th grade advanced debate and fundamental principles of economic and personal finance, and then Mandarin, world languages, Mandarin levels 1 through 4. Just one thing I did want to clarify from a previous meeting, I think Dr. Gonzalez did a good job after public comment, kind of clarifying some of the presentations that we linked to at a previous meeting. There may have been a little bit of misunderstanding among some members of the public about some of the resources that were linked to for the development of health lessons that we're working on this year. Some of the sections that were read aloud were sample curricula from other districts, which we are using as references, which we often do as a way to determine what we don't want to do. So I just wanted to get that out there one more time to clarify, just in case anyone is here with any concerns about that. We in curriculum have not seen any draft curricula for revised health this year. We anticipate that it will come before the end of the school year, but we haven't seen it yet. So anybody who's telling you that Westfield wants to do this because I saw it in writing, that's a reference document, and that's not something that we anticipate using for our own curriculum.
In fact, I believe some of the information that was provided was from a different state, just to clarify that.
Yep, that's true. So just wanted to hit upon that, and our next curriculum meeting is this coming Friday. Since our next board meeting is next week, I'm sure we'll have some fresh items for you on next week's agenda. So if there are any other comments from anybody who was at our last meeting, if not, that's it for curriculum for
All
tonight.
right, thank you, Amy. Mike, do you have a facilities report for us?
Yeah, just a couple comments. We haven't had a facilities meeting yet, but I gave the report at the last meeting. But just a couple facilities-related items. I've received a couple of questions regarding the Elm Street tennis fields, and we added that to the agenda for the upcoming April 5th meeting. And then there was, though, a neighborhood advisory meeting in regard to the Edison Fields project, and that was on February 23rd. And who was in attendance was the mayor was there, Town Administrator Jim Gilday. There were people from the Recreation Commission, and then there's a neighborhood advisory group, which are a series of appointed residents within town who are bringing their concerns to this diverse group, was in attendance, and Sandy Memory representing our athletic teams. And the residents, there was a presentation to the residents about what changes they made to the plan, and the residents brought up some of their comments, and I'm just generalizing here, these are not all the comments, but just practices and end time of the field, parking lot capacity when simultaneous events are occurring, renting out to outside organizations outside of Westfield, overall utilization and capacity of the field, lights, turf or grass, and overall cost. So the town council continues to work on this. They've not provided us any proposal. There's nothing for us to act upon at this point, but I just wanted to provide an update that there are meetings going on. They're going to have another follow-up neighborhood advisory committee meeting in a couple of weeks. But there's nothing for us to do at this point other than listen and follow along. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. And just to reiterate that we are not voting on anything related to Edison Fields tonight, and Mike is just giving an update of community meetings. All right, Amy, do you have a finance report for us?
Yes, unlike curriculum, finance just met yesterday to talk about the presentation that Dana gave us tonight and walk through some of the different variables that have been considered in getting to some ideas about what we may need to cut moving forward. We also talked about the kinds of things we talk about every time we get together with finance, which is experience with our health insurance payments and discussion of where we anticipate fund balances will be at the end of the year. So all good standard stuff. It's not all gloom and doom. And so finance, the agenda items tonight, there are 10 items that we'll be voting on. Nothing super unusual. We do get to finally vote to accept the audit report. We had discussed it at a previous meeting, but had been waiting for information from the state in order to finalize what we submit back to the state. So that's up. Also, going out for bid, actually accepting a bid, yes, on digital electricity and approving withdrawal from a capital reserve account for some environmental testing for an anticipated Phase 2 HVAC renovation, that kind of thing. There are also some, as we have alluded to earlier in our conversations, there are some donations that we'll be moving to accept with gratitude from a couple community groups that support us. And I think that's pretty much it in terms of finance. Our next finance meeting won't be till April, so we need to move it, and I'll let you know when the next one will be, when we determine the new date.
All right, thank you, Amy. I will now move into our long-range planning report. So the long-range planning committee met for the first time this calendar year, not the school year, but we've actually met 4 hours ago. We started laying the groundwork to kick off our next strategic plan, which we anticipate kicking off sometime probably this fall. We'll continue doing the groundwork from the board level, the district administration level. At one point this spring, we'll be hiring a consultant or a facilitator to help oversee that process. Really just talking broad strokes about what we want the strategic plan to look like, what we want to come out of it. We don't want to go through the motions just to go through the motions. We want it to be a document that not only tells us what the community is interested in, but what the district can do to get to those steps over a 5-year period, 5 or so year period. And we're really looking forward to kicking off a process that we last did in 2016. I believe I'm the only board member who is currently on the board that was part of that last time. It was a very worthwhile couple of weekends. Yes, you are going to have to give up a couple Saturdays, guys. But it really allowed us to interact with the community and teachers and administrators all at the same time in ways that we don't get to do in our normal capacity as a board member. It's very rare that we're talking to teachers unless they're your child's teacher. So hearing what's exciting them about our schools or what they'd like to see, that's really where you get to that wish list ideas. And it gets refined down to something that's actionable, but it's nice to hear the wish list. So I'm very much looking forward to both the preparation for it and then ultimately putting together our next strategic plan. Dr. Niels, would you like to add anything else to that discussion?
No, I think it really dovetails nicely with the conversation that we had earlier about, really using that as the driving document to help us both dream and set the trajectory to see those dreams become a reality in our schools. So it certainly will be a worthwhile exercise, both as a new superintendent to hear all of that from our various stakeholders in the community, but also to be an active participant in that. Come this fall, I'll have had a full year under my belt, seeing the start and the finish of a school year and seeing all those great experiences that define our school district. So I certainly support and look forward to the strategic planning process and what it will afford us as a roadmap moving forward.
And as we get closer to that process, we'll find ways to get all board members involved through various committees so that everybody's aware of what we're doing and how we're doing it and what the next steps going forward. So now on to policies. We have the longest policy agenda I've seen in a long time. We have 16 policies that we're either approving new or revising, and we're repealing 9 tonight. This is all out of our policy audit. When Dr. Gonzalez first came to the district, one of the things we asked him to do is look at our policies, and he said, I'm going to hire an expert. And it's the service that we've been using to supply us with policy updates for years, Strauss Esme. We paid them to look at our policies and tell us where we're compliant, where we're deficient, where we're missing, where we have policies that we don't need. And they came up with close to 100 recommendations for changes. We've divvied that audit report up to various committees. Finance took a big chunk of them in their last meeting, 2 meetings ago, sorry. And it's divide and conquer. It's to go through 100 policies. It's just the 4 of us would take 2 years. So we're grateful for the help from the entire board. The only policy that the bylaw that we're substantively changing tonight is the bylaws and policies policy 0131, and we're only making a change to shorten the timeline between first and second reading, so that we can make the recommended changes throughout the course of the rest of the school year. If we had to wait 4 weeks between first and second reading for every time we're updating a policy number, not even making a substantive change, but just making a change to the policy itself, we'd be here for months or years. just on a procedural basis. I did push that out to the board back in early February or late January, so that's not a change that should be new to anybody. The only other bylaw we're changing is we're repealing 0147, board member travel expenses, because we have an identical policy in the 6,000 series that covers all district employees and does specifically mention board members as well. No reason to have the same thing listed twice. It's how you end up with conflicting documents if one gets edited and the other doesn't. The rest of these are changes that are recommended by Strauss Esme, and wherever possible, we're going to use their language exclusively instead of making Westfield specific versions of policies. It's just more work for the administration to administer, more work for the lawyers to vet, to make sure our language is compliant with law. We're already paying lawyers to write us the policies. Why are we rewriting them? So that's our plan going forward. But there are 16 policies that we're revising tonight and 9 that we are repealing. And then just on the legislation end of things, the last part of the policy here, we have in late January, the state passed a law and it was signed into law by the governor, mandating that we have a student representative on the board starting in September. So starting in September, there will be an additional chair here at this table with a representative from the high school. The state has not given us any guidance as to how we're going to do that yet. So there is no new policy, but it is a change in legislation, and we're following it. So there will be a high school student sitting up probably next to Mary in September. Surprise. And then lastly, under governance, we have one governance item tonight, and it's to ratify the contract between the Board of Education and the Westfield Association of Educational Secretaries. I want to thank their group for reaching a quick settlement with us in December after some stops and starts when we were trying to negotiate virtually. Specifically, I want to call out Terry McManus, Barbara Bernansky, Judy Lynch, and Joan Penzak for the hours that they've given to help negotiate a 4-year deal. So we won't, assuming we ratify their contract tonight, the secretaries ratified last week, we won't have to negotiate with them until 2025. Any questions on any of that? Because I threw a lot at you.
I just have a question about the repeals. So I know we're just doing a first reading. What's the general basis for repealing these, looks like about 10 policies or 9 policies?
So the first two are because we have an identical policy in 6147, which covers all district finances. We don't need a specific one talking about board member expenses when we have a policy that mentions the board members in a general policy. The next two, Families First Coronavirus Response Act, that law expired. We don't need a policy there. The rest were recommended to be repealed by Strauss Esme. They're not required because they're state law when it comes to religious holidays. The state now has a list of policies. We don't need to come up with our own definition of a religious holiday. If I remember correctly, there's something like 119 different days on that list. Dr. Galazos, anything else to add?
No, just as Brendan just pointed out, I think the review of the existing policies allowed us to identify where we may have duplicative policies that we want to eliminate in order to avoid any conflict. So through that experience, we were able to identify those. If there's any policies that are addressed in other policies, we'll rely on the Strauss Esme policy manual as our primary guide.
Yes, and oftentimes when the state changes the law, a new policy gets drafted that combines the aspects of multiple different policies, and Strauss Esme will then tell us to repeal them. We're not getting rid of school safety as a concept. We're just getting rid of a policy that's duplicative in probably 4 different other policies.
Brendan?
Yeah.
Oh, if I could, I just wanted to chime in and say I'm glad we're able to ratify the contract for the Secretaries Association. I know their president is here, Judy Lynch, she got up and spoke at a previous meeting and rightfully pointed out that they were working without a new contract, which is a little unusual for our district. We typically like to start the year with a contract in place. And as Brendan said, once we were able to get together, we were able to expeditiously come to an agreement, which we are very thankful for. That is another tradition of Westfield that we are very pleased to be able to continue, and we really value our relationship with our various associations. So thank you very much, Judy. Thank
Yep.
you.
It's the longest contract the secretaries have had in this district, and from a finance perspective on the board side, we settled right at or just below the county average for all 4 years of the contract. That's what everybody's looking at. We'd love it to be lower, they'd love it to be higher, but it's usually where we wind up settling because we're all in the same financial circumstances. I'd also like to thank Mike Beelan, Amy Root, and former board member Rob Garrison, along with Dana and our labor attorney, Jerlise Gutierrez, for the hours that they've given us. Thank you. All right. And now we'll open up public comment, if there's no questions on any committee reports from board members. Yeah, I'm going to read it. During this portion of the meeting, district residents and staff are invited to address the Board of Education on agenda action items only. These are items that are going to be under items 9, A, B, C, D, and E on the posted agenda. This is so we can hear from the public about items we're going to vote on before we vote on them. The board requests that individuals state their name and address for the record, the specific action items they're commenting on, and asks that all remarks be directed to the board president or designee, not to individual board members or staff. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of other individuals in speaking. Specifically, comments regarding personnel matters are discouraged and cannot be responded to by the board. Students and employees have specific legal rights afforded by the laws of New Jersey. The board bears no responsibility nor will be liable for any comments made by members of the public. If a matter concerning a district staff member is of interest or concern to a resident, the matter should be referred to the responsible building principal, the superintendent of schools, or the Board of Education, either by telephone, letter, or email. Although the board may not respond to items raised during the public forum, all public comments will be considered. Please note that if any member of the public becomes disrupted during the meeting, the board president may terminate the participant's comment. Continued disruptions may result in removal from the meeting or adjournment of the meeting. Each speaker's statement will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes in duration. Name and address for the record, please.
Sure. Kyle George, 605 Short Hills Court. I'm going to comment on tonight's policy and legislation action agenda. There are 25 policies on the agenda for first reading, for addition, update, or repeal, 72 pages of policies all at once. As Mr. Galligan said a minute ago, it's the largest policy agenda in a single meeting, apparently. I just want to read out a couple, the titles of these, just to give an example of how broad the spectrum here is. So you got bylaws and policies, Board of Education website accessibility, administrative employment contracts, military leave, support staff members, school district reporting responsibilities, commercial driver's license, controlled substance and alcohol abuse testing, suspected gang activity, federal awards, funds, internal controls, allowability of costs, mandatory disclosures, interest. Contracts for goods or services funded by federal grants, school security program, unmanned aircraft systems, records retention, lunch offer versus serve, use of electronic signatures, board member travel expenses, board member compensation and expenses, Federal Families First Coronavirus Response Act, independent study programs, family leave, children displaced by domestic violence, school safety, missing children, and religious holidays. That is quite the list right there. It's an impressive list. But out of these 25 policies, there's one missing. It's the one that continues to be ignored over the past year. This is, of course, the controversial issues policy revision 6 of you who were here for tabled last year. Yes, this has been ignored for so long that 3 of the BOE members weren't here when it happened, and it was 5 months before Dr. Gonzalez even started. If you recall, this policy needed revision after Chris Campbell spoke as a guest of Westfield High School 1 year ago this month. In his remarks, he told kids that Israel was an apartheid state. That sounds familiar. Among other outrageous things, while administrators and librarians supporting the presentation did nothing to intervene. In the aftermath, the controversial issues policy was redrafted. It wasn't as strong as some of us hoped, but it was something.
He's talking about policies.
Yet this simple revision was tabled last year. You can go look it up to see why. And now we have the policy kitchen sink here, but no controversial issues policy. Why can you take action on all these items without taking action on the thing that you tabled last year, which has never come up again? So please stop ignoring this. And if you can revise 25 policies at once, surely you can fit this one that was actually needed too. Thank you.
All right. If there are no other members of the public who wish to speak on agenda action items, ask the board to approve the minutes of the February 2022 board meeting and the minutes and the private minutes there too. I'm not saying all those twos again. Thank you, Mike. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Thank you, Sonal. All right. I ask the board to approve governance item number 1. This is to approve the agreement between the Westfield Association of Educational Secretaries, WAES, and the Westfield Board of Education for the period backdated to July 1st, 2021 through June 30th, 2025, as attached. Have a second? Thank you, Kristen. Dana?
Yes. Rob Bonaccio,
Yes.
Mike Beelan,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Leila Morelli,
Yes.
Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Amy Root,
Yes.
Kristen Sonic Smeltz,
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Brendan?
Yep.
Sorry, if I could just interject
Absolutely.
briefly. Just wanted to say, it sounds like the crowd in Cafeteria A is also pleased with
Yes.
with that, the passage of that vote. That's all. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Amy. And congratulations, Judy. All right, I ask the board to approve personnel items numbers 1 through, what's the last one here? 21.
21.
Can I have a second? Thank you, Sonal. Dr. Gonzalez, do you have any you'd like to speak about?
So tonight, I'm announcing with regret the retirement of elementary teacher Mary Tarashuk. For almost 23 years, Mary has taught 4th grade at Wilson School, where her students have thrived in her innovative and creative classroom. Mary's enthusiasm is contagious, and even the most mundane learning becomes an adventure. In 2017, Mary was honored with the National Educator's Choice Content Award for her 4th graders' projects, which focused on the theme, Do Something Meaningful. She has shared her deep knowledge of Readers and Writers Workshop by serving as a building literacy coach for her colleagues, and her expertise will be greatly missed. We wish Mary a happy and healthy retirement.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on personnel?
Just one comment. My kids never had Mary Tarashuk, but her class always seemed to be having the most fun. She was a great educator and a very vibrant teacher at Wilson School, so she will certainly be missed, and we wish her well in her retirement.
Thank you, Amy. Rob?
Yeah, there's one. There's a staff member, a teacher at Franklin, Lauren Trenton, who's resigning as part of this personnel package here. Both of my girls sat in Trenton as their first grade teachers, or as their first grade teacher. So I'd like to publicly thank her for a real wonderful job with them. She always treated all the kids in her first grade as if they were her own. So I just want to wish her best of luck wherever her path takes her.
Thank you, Rob. Dana?
Sahar Aziz,
Yes.
Rob Bonaccio,
Yes.
Mike Beelan,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Leila Morelli,
Yes.
Sonal Patel,
Yes.
Amy Root,
Yes?
Kristen Sonic Smeltz,
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Thank you. Amy?
Okay. I would like the board to consider finance items 1 through 10. Could I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Leila. I mentioned a few of them up front in my board report. We're accepting our audit report. As I mentioned, well, I'll skip to the end and say, the part that I wanted to call out is we wanted to, item number 9 is to accept with gratitude the following donations. from the Westfield Coalition for the Arts, $5,000, partially funding the piano restoration project at Westfield High School, which tag teams nicely with the Westfield Choral Parents Association, donating approximately $26,000. The deposit to get the piano restoration project started. So
There's other donations coming, I believe.
donations coming? Yes, yes. Yeah, it's an expensive project, but it's an expensive piano, and to be able to maintain it and restore it and upgrade it for future use is definitely worth the investment, and we're extremely grateful to these two community organizations that have supported us in the past, and for other donations that we know are coming from other members of the community. So I just wanted to make sure that we called those out. Any comments or questions about any other finance items?
Just to comment, how grateful we are, as always, for the Coalition of the Arts and now the Choral Parents Association. They're spending a combined $31,000 to restore a piano, which shows how valuable that piano is. I believe it's a 9-foot full-size Steiner piano, and we've had it in this district for close to 100 years.
Right. Just a comment on that, you know, it was so nice to be back and watch the chorus performances. Both Sonal and I have members of several different choruses, right, combined. But to watch, it was like the best night of music to watch them back. And I mean, Mr. B and Mrs. Francis, they give their heart and their soul. I mean, there were tears at being back and being able to perform live. It was really, it was just amazing to see and be a part of. So I just want to thank them for this drive to fix the piano as well.
Thank you, Leila.
Okay. Any other comments? No? Okay. All right.
Sahar Aziz,
Yes.
Rob Bonaccio,
Yes.
Mike Beelan,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Leila Morelli, Sonal Patel, Amy Root,
Yes.
Kristen Sonic Schmeltz,
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
All right. Now I ask the board to approve policy item number 1. Can I have a second? Thank you, Leila. This is to approve for first reading following policies. 0131, bylaws and policies. 1511, Board of Education website accessibility. 1620, administrative employment contracts. 3437, military leave. 4159, support staff member, school district reporting responsibilities. 4219, commercial driver's license, controlled substance and alcohol use testing. 5615, suspected gang activity. 6115.1, federal awards, funds internal controls, allowability of cost. 1615.02, federal awards / funds internal controls, mandatory disclosures. 1615.03, federal awards, funds internal controls, interest. 6311, contracts for goods or services funded by federal grants. 7446, school security program. 7481, unmanned aircraft systems. 8350, records retention. 8508, lunch offer versus serve, OVS. And 9242, use of electronic signatures. Any questions on those? All right, Dana?
Sahar Aziz,
Yes.
Rob Bonaccio,
Yes.
Michael Beelan,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Leila Morelli, Sonal Patel, Amy Root,
Yes.
Kristen Sonic Schmeltz,
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
Thank you. And now I ask the board to approve for first reading to repeal the following policies as attached. Can I have a second? Thank you, Leila. This is to repeal 0147, board member travel expenses. 0147.1, board member compensation and expenses. 1649, Federal Families First Coronavirus Response Act. 2320, independent study programs. 3431.1, family leave. 51.14, children displaced by domestic violence. 7430, school safety. 8464, missing children, and 8810, religious holidays. Any questions, comments? All right, Dana?
Sahar Aziz,
Yes.
Mike Beelan,
Yes.
Brendan Galligan,
Yes.
Rob Garrison. That's not Rob Garrison, sorry. This is separate. Leila Yeah, but I think I skipped somebody, Rob
You
Bonaccio.
forgot Rob.
Well, yeah, it's still a Rob, yes.
Leila Morelli.
Yes.
Sona Patel.
Yes.
Amy Root. Yes. Kristen Sonic-Schmelz.
Yes.
And Mary Wickens.
Thank you. And our next policy meeting is on April 4th. Amy? Sip.
I would like the board to consider curriculum item number one and only. Can I have a second? Thank you, Leila. All right. As I said, I'm asking you to approve for second reading curricula we discussed at our previous meeting. 2 social studies classes, 8th grade advanced debate, and fundamental principles of economic and personal finance, which is a high school class, and then world languages classes at the high school, Mandarin 1, 2, 3, and 4. Any questions? No? Oh, yep.
Sorry, I may have, maybe out of place in timing. I just, one quick question. Do we have an AP Mandarin or we do not?
No, I don't believe so. This is actually the first year we're able to conduct a section of Mandarin 4.
Okay.
It's been discussed and offered, it's been in the course guide to sort of show kids that it's possible. If you continue with Mandarin, there will be a Mandarin 4 waiting for you, and this is the year when there's critical mass.
Great.
Whether there's consideration of an AP class or not, I am not sure, but we'll be seeing Enrique Pinque at our curriculum meeting this Friday for a different subject, and we can certainly ask him. if that's something.
The only reason I'm mentioning it is because I've actually had parents ask me that.
I see,
So
okay.
I don't know how many there are, but people
Got
have
it.
actually asked me if there's AP Mandarin.
Amy, in the past where we've had, using Latin for instance, there's been talk of combining honors and regular to expand those offerings. Is that something Mandarin is doing or considering in the future?
I'm not sure that they have the mass and the experience level yet, but again, it is something that we can talk about. And actually, Latin is what Mr. Pinque is coming to talk to us about on Friday.
Excellent. Yeah.
And I recall the last time he came through SIP to discuss Latin, that they did talk about the higher level offering regular and honors side by side, same teacher taught at the same time, but a slightly different track going on in the same classroom.
Different depth of its readings or an extra set of homework assignments or whatever.
Right,
And then obviously tests would be different, but they're all learning at the same time, and it's a great way to offer 2 courses without having to, one, have the students that are interested and hire another staff person.
Agreed. When it comes to an AP class, though, that's going to be different,
Oh, of course. I mean, that's
Right. Yeah,
uh,
since the
very
College
different.
Board sets the pace and the course content, that's a little bit beyond the ability to probably run them concurrently. But again, it's a worthy topic, and we'll have the man to answer the questions on Friday, so hopefully next Tuesday we can give you an answer.
Fantastic. Thank you.
I just want to add, because we were talking about strategic planning, so as somebody who teaches at higher education at the college and graduate level, it is a major, major advantage to have Mandarin available to our students, because the demand for that language right now, because of changing global geopolitics, has just skyrocketed. And so this is an example of the types of things that I hope we do more of in our school district, but our students are fortunate to have that option.
Yes. And we are fortunate to have the teacher we have who is able to teach all 4 levels. So she's great, and we are really thankful for that. Yeah.
Excellent.
Any other comments? No? Okay, Dana?
Sahar Aziz.
Yes.
Rob Bonaccio.
Yes.
Mike Phelan.
Yes.
Brendan Galligan.
Yes.
Leila Morelli. Sona Patel. Amy Root.
Yes?
Kristen Sonic-Schmelz.
Yes.
Mary Wickens.
All right. Just a reminder, hit your microphone so that it gets picked up on the recording. This whole side of the room.
You all are so soft-spoken. Yeah. Speak out.
I ask the board to note the notes for the record. So noted. Any unfinished business? Any new business? Liaison reports.
I have one. Oh, sorry, did you have one?
No.
Okay.
Scratching my hair.
So,
Microphone is off.
this year I'm the representative on the Union County Ed Services Commission. That's a lot of letters. It's been really interesting to sit on another board. But I just wanted to just let you know that Interestingly enough, they have not decided to be mask optional. So if we do have students who are attending any of their schools, and if they are attending their schools, they are taking their transportation, is masks required at this time due to the nature of the population. So I just wanted to give you an update on that.
Thank you, Leila.
Okay, so Edison Intermediate School, this was a little over a month ago, but there was some discussion about how to provide, I don't know if training is the right word, but some form of education to students on the proper use of social media. And it was, they were very preliminary conversations, but the PTO and some of the parents just are, many of us already know who have children, which is that social media can sometimes create different types of problems, and that it might be helpful, or that the PTO felt that it might be helpful to figure out how to formalize how to teach students and younger children, especially in middle school, in their use of technology, or social media in particular. So more on that, but that just was something that came up organically. And I don't know if, again, I don't know if that's going to be formalized through curriculum, or if that's more of enrichment or after school, but I know that the parents at least had expressed that concern to the PTO.
Got it. If I could just chime in on that, again, with a little bit of history. It may be initial stages of this round of that conversation, but it is a conversation that comes up cyclically time and time again, because it's something we all struggle with, adults as well as children. And in the past, it is addressed by teachers, whether it's part of perhaps,
It's like a presentation that the district does.
It is, and it is also something that PTOs at various schools in the past have helped to facilitate by bringing in an outside speaker on an evening, and parents will come, hear the speaker, hear the tips, hear the talking points, and that can be a helpful discussion point as well. So sometimes it's at the PTO level, sometimes it's something through the schools, but again, we will probably continue to struggle with it as we move forward. But I'm glad they're talking about it and seeing how they can be helpful to the school.
And our guidance department does a fantastic job addressing issues as they arise from a social emotional learning perspective. Social media has been an issue in this district since MySpace. So.
What?
What's that?
Sahar, were they looking at it as something for parents to do, or a presentation for the kids?
I think it was more for the kids.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
Yeah.
I could say as an educator to have. I mean, I know we've had, that's what I was going to say before, that we've had presentations in the past for parents about social media, but the kids
And I
really
don't-
don't understand a lot of the times, from what I'm seeing in my school, the consequences that can come.
Well, and I think
from-
it was more
from that.
along the lines of, maybe social media might be too narrow, but the communication through electronic means that can create the type of things you would write that you would never say to someone's face, which certainly has an adult phenomena to it too, but, or adult component. But it was because they're so young and they're in 6th and 7th grade, and this tends to be when a lot of young kids get their iPhones, and then get access to these apps.
Any other liaison reports? Yep, Mike.
Yes, I was at the Recreation Commission meeting last night, and I gave an update of Edison as far as the facilities, but then just other areas of interest that might be important to some parents and residents, just want to relay out. So registration for the summer playground program is now open. It's going to occur from June 28th to August 5th. And if anybody's interested, they can go to www.westfieldnj.gov/recreation for more info. The memorial pool permits are also on sale at westfieldnj.gov/pool. And then, while it's not being announced yet, sounds like an interesting event, so you might want to keep the date open. The Westfield Recreation Department is going to be planning a fishing derby where they're going to stock Mindawaskan Park with fish. and then you're going to be able to go and compete against other, I guess, families in town against that. So it sounds kind of interesting. I would need a big net. And then finally, Westfield last year, I just learned about this program and I want to communicate out. In conjunction with the Great Swamp Nature Preserve, they hold a plant sale, which they have 28 different species of plants available, and you actually can go online to their website between April 1st and 22nd to purchase these plants, and you don't have to actually go there and pick them up. They're going to deliver them to Brightwood Park, and people were saying that the plant prices are much better than what you would find in a retail environment. So if anyone is interested in that, the address is www.greatswamp.org/native-plant-sale for additional information. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Just Dana, real quick, do we have any projects this year that are going to impact the playground program from running? Because I know we haven't been able to offer it or allow the rec department to offer it in their full capacity for about 5 years now due to various construction projects.
Shouldn't be a problem.
Okay. So the first full year back for the playground camp,
I don't know.
at
if
least
they're-
as of now.
Yeah, I don't know what their plans are. I haven't talked to them. Maybe they've talked to Sean, so I don't know what
Okay.
schools they're using or anything.
Brendan?
Amy?
I just have a couple quick liaison reports. For Franklin School, I was able to attend virtually their last meeting, and they have another one coming up this Friday for their executive board. And they've been really busy kind of working to reintegrate sort of normal activities this year to the extent that they've been able to. Increasing food days, for instance, which I know is going on at all the different elementary schools, and it sounds like it's very exciting, and we hope we're able to continue with that. Because I know that's a big part of what they offer. Also just continuing their other spring activities and their fifth grade activities. So they're working hard and doing their best, and I look forward to getting an update from them on Friday. Then also last Thursday, I was able to attend the high school's PTSO meeting, which is kind of fun because it's the one level where you actually get students coming from the SGA talking about student activities. So we were hearing about Community Service Week, and about a planned dance for underclassmen because homecoming was restricted to seniors only, to kind of keep social distancing as a possibility. It's thrilling that homecoming is actually very popular these days. Not so much when my kids were here, but more so now, which is great. So there'll be another dance coming up, and they're talking about all kinds of different spring activities as well. The PTSO is also sponsoring a night, I think it's the last Tuesday of March, where young alums come, not coming physically, they're coming via Zoom to talk about things that they wish they'd known when they were students here. So I wish I knew then what I know now. And that's kind of a perennial favorite too. I think it's targeted at juniors and seniors, but obviously students of any age can tune in with their parents and hear the advice of recent graduates. And then just one note from Mrs. Esfendis, the principal at the high school. I asked her how the experience was going through midterms, because we had heard some concerns from parents that midterms had not been offered for a while. Kids were anxious and concerned about the stress of studying and what would they cover and did we have enough time, and another district wasn't going to offer it and did we have to. And she said actually at the end of the day, the results of this year's midterms were very consistent with what they had been on any pre-COVID year. So we're glad to hear that. We're glad that it's providing meaningful feedback for the teachers and for the students, and fingers crossed that we'll be able to have some form of a normal final exam schedule if that's what we determine things to be. So, and then just one final note, PTC general meeting is tomorrow morning at 10:15 via Zoom for anyone who would like to connect to that. I think you can find the link to them to reach out for the link via the board tab. And I missed the last meeting, so I look forward to giving more of an update from that next time. That is all. Thank you.
All right, any other liaison reports? I normally have a bunch, but they all are meeting later this week, so I'll give you guys an update next time. With that, I'll reopen public comment. During this portion of the meeting, members of the public are invited to address the Board of Education on any topic. The board requests that individuals state their name and address for the record and asks that all remarks be directed to the board president or designate. not to individual board members or staff. The board asks that members of the public be courteous and mindful of the rights of others, individuals when speaking. Specifically, comments regarding personnel matters are discouraged and cannot be responded to by the board. Students and employees have specific legal rights afforded by the laws of New Jersey. The board bears no responsibility nor will be liable for any comments made by members of the public. If a matter concerning a district staff member is of interest or concern to a resident, the matter should be referred to the responsible building principal, the superintendent of schools, or the Board of Education, either by telephone, letter, or email. Although the board may not respond to items raised during the public forum, all public comments will be considered. Please note that if a member of the public becomes disruptive during the meeting, the board president may terminate the participant's statement. Continued disruptions may result in removal from the meeting or adjournment of the meeting. Each speaker's statement will be limited to 3 minutes in duration. If you'd like to speak, please come to the podium and then line up along the wall.
Hello, everyone. My name is Virginia Berman. My address is 717 Harding Street. I have 2 children, Gavin in 3rd grade at Washington School and Tallulah, who will be entering kindergarten at Lincoln School in the fall. Gavin also attended Lincoln School for kindergarten. We are one of the 48 families out of 148 who did not initially get selected for the kindergarten wrap program. I was unable to respond to the email for 40 minutes, so we began at number 33 on the wait list. As of yesterday, we were number 7. While I understand that the wrap program is not required to be offered, the demand for it reinforces the fact that Westfield is in need of a full-day kindergarten program. Having attended Compass Schoolhouse since she was 2 years old, my daughter is starting to read and write. A 2.5-hour school day will not cut it for her, nor the children who need more time to reach these goals. Compass Schoolhouse has a single kindergarten class down from 4 junior K classes and no room to grow. Many of our local private preschools are in a similar situation. We cannot continue to rely on the private schools to do the work our public school system should be undertaking, especially when the national conversation has moved beyond our delayed position and onto universal pre-K as the needed standard. With the potential removal of social distancing rules and a lack of additional kindergarten registrants, it is highly likely the rest of the children on the wait list will be able to join the wrap program. That won't be the time to be complacent, that we survived another year of making do. We need a reasonable and feasible plan for bringing full-day kindergarten to fruition, and we need it now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Should I wait?
It's up to you.
Would anyone else like to go for me?
Yeah.
Can I start?
Mhm.
My name is Jean Lemberg. I live at 528 Grove Street. I have heard the proponents of the Edison Field project justify the use of artificial turf on school property by stating that Edison school students already have physical education classes at Kaler Field and no parent has complained. The idea that no parent has ever complained about their child having PE classes on artificial turf begs the question, have all the parents of EIS students been made aware that PE classes are sometimes held on the artificial turf at Kaler Field and not exclusively on the grass field behind Edison School? When my children attended the Westfield Public Schools, I assumed that the school buildings and grounds had been vetted for safety, and I imagine that's true for most parents. This means that even if parents were aware that their children were exposed to artificial turf during PE classes and recess, they would believe it to be safe simply because it existed on school property. In 2004, when the public was asked to consider a bond referendum for the installation of an artificial turf field at Kaler Field, the health risks and negative environmental impacts related to artificial turf were not widely known. But that is not the case today. Experts from numerous health and science organizations have raised health and safety concerns about exposing children to the toxic chemicals which are found in artificial turf and instead suggest organically maintained natural grass athletic fields as the safest playing surface. This leads me to the question, has anyone, such as Dr. Gonzalez, or the school principals, especially the principals of Edison, Lincoln, Jefferson, McKinley, and Tamaqua schools, sent a letter to the parents of current and future EIS students to provide the details of the Edison Field project and the potential health risks and environmental impacts associated with artificial turf? If not, why not? Although it is too late to change Kaler Field, it is not too late to make the correct choice at EIS and other school properties. You can do this by following the precautionary principle, which states, when an activity raises threats of harm to human health or the environment, precautionary measures should be taken, even if some cause and effect relationships are not fully established scientifically. In this context, the proponent of an activity rather than the public should bear the burden of proof. This
30
means
seconds.
that you should say no to artificial turf and yes to organically maintained natural grass. Thank you for your consideration, and I have some pamphlets from one of the organizations
I'll take
that
this.
I've
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Tara Ciccone, 810 Fairacres Avenue. I have a couple topics I'd like to touch on tonight. I want to say that I'm thrilled to see the progress that we have seen. No masks. It's so nice to see everyone's faces. And I'm so thrilled of the changes that we've had this week. But I have to say we have a lot more to do. The unvaccinated children and staff in this town are being treated unfairly. This week, my child came home from school sick. He has natural immunity. He had COVID probably 105 days ago, maybe 110. So he's well outside of his 90 days, right? He got this cold that he has from his sister, who tested negative last week for COVID. He cannot go back to school now until he tests negative twice or gets a lab test. This is what the nurses at the high school said. Even though he got it from his sister, she did not have COVID. I felt that there were enough there was enough evidence here that he did not have COVID. He didn't have any close contacts, nothing. I asked the nurse if a vaccinated student felt exactly the same or was in the same exact position, would they have to test? I was told no. Can anyone point me to the data, the information, the science, which says at this point that unvaccinated are spreading this differently than the vaccinated? Because I think what we saw in January and December disproves that theory. Are we going to test every sniffle, every cough? Should my child simply avoid the nurse's office and text me if he doesn't feel well and I call the office? Is this a relationship that we want? In August of last year, 8 months ago, the CDC finally admitted what we already knew, that that the vaccinated can transmit COVID-19 just as much as the unvaccinated. The theory of testing one population over the other has been debunked. I don't understand why we keep doing it. Furthermore, I don't know what's on these swabs. You want me to swab my kids with there's chemicals all over them. So much so that the teachers in Westfield and in Scotch Plains have both lobbied and won to have saliva testing. It's not safe, it's not healthy for our kids, and the push to have them test continually and not treat this as we have treated illness in the past, it's the wrong take. I'd like to also address the rest, I'm sorry? 30 seconds. I'm gonna skip my bathroom issue because I emailed you guys today, and sorry. But I just want to say what I saw at last meeting was extremely disappointing. I don't know when it became acceptable for a board member to dominate over 30 minutes of meeting time to a personal agenda.
When did it become acceptable for a board member to chastise this community, calling members sexists, racist, and other politics?
Well, I tried to wait, but I guess Mrs. East had an urgent matter. Kyle George, 605 Short Hills Court. I can't quite wrap my head around the irony that the person with 55,000 tweets wants to educate our children on social media use, but I don't know. But before I get to that, first I just want to thank Dr. Gonzalez for restoring some sanity to our children's lives by making masks optional and using its executive authority to alter the policies this week as the need became apparent. Thank you. Now I want to comment on the last BOE meeting. I was shocked and appalled at the sideshow spectacle that was allowed to go on by this entire BOE. Many parents raised issues publicly and privately to the BOE, and this BOE allowed a parade of commentators to come and turn it into a political rally. This BOE has recessed before due to people eating pizza and abruptly adjourned recently when a Westfield resident went over time, yet didn't do anything to instruct the non-resident public responding to whatever bat signal that they received on how comment is conducted in Westfield. But that's not even the real issue. The real issue is how the BOE VP was given a bully pulpit to denigrate parents with the guts to get up here and call out these problems. I know that many more parents have called and emailed you telling you their personal story of how Mrs. Ease's tweets and remarks upset them or made them feel ostracized, many of them descendants of Holocaust survivors. Mr. Galligan, Mrs. Ease was allowed to sit right there unabated for 10 minutes and dismiss their legitimate and tangible concerns and their legitimate argument for nexus with the district's business. From the dais, she called them either directly or through allusion Islamophobes, sexists, misogynists, etc. This is not about the VP's identity. That assertion is unbelievable. This is about the ideas that she propagates and how it affects her ability to govern the school district for all children. Remember, we've had swastikas in Westfield High School. The BOE VP tweets about Israel being an apartheid state all the time, says from the river to the sea is a call for unity, and yet parents are told not only that their concerns have no merit by the BOE and the press, but then they are slandered from the podium. While I may be one of the few up here speaking, it's not just me who feels this way. I thought the editorial board of the Westfield Leader did a fantastic job summarizing the issue with Mrs. Ease's comments at the last meeting, and I quote from their article. This is written by the editorial board. VP Aziz is not entitled to tell Jewish people how to feel about her statements, end quote. This BOE must stop ignoring the genuine concerns that have been expressed. These concerns are not just about tweets, they are about the lack of sensitivity that an elected official has to things that many Jews find anti-Semitic that she said in her public speech, and thus raises concerns about the BOE's ability to help the district tackle the tangible problem of anti-Semitism in our schools. BOE members are held to different standards by law than general members of the public. Start enforcing your standards.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Lori McCormick, 917 Taste Place. I was not going to speak tonight, but here I am. I'd like to comment on a comment that was made about comments made by the public about sex education. The comments by the public were in fact accurate. I was here, and I was one of those members of the public. The lesson Dr. Pinheiro linked, the lessons I should say, were from Advocates for Youth, and the lessons that were quoted were from the New Jersey lesson plans. They were not from another state. I know, because I quoted them. And while I'm on quotes, I'm going to read exactly what he said at that board meeting. He specifically chose the lessons, as he said, and I quote, to provide a good sense of the resources we will be looking at towards the curriculum revision. He stated the organization had done a, quote, a really good job of pulling together resources for the teachers. The mere fact that he would approve of some of these lessons and further deem them as helpful or well done is extremely concerning and needs to be addressed for the sake of our young children. That is a red flag. I could not stand by and let you dismiss what was presented by the head of curriculum, how many weeks ago was that? February 22nd? And accurately addressed by concerned residents.
Thank you.
Is it customary that the board member just leaves, or the same board member that lectured us for quite some time? I don't know. It does seem a little odd. And do I have to give, I could get, Christine Binder, do I have to give my address? Because last
Yes.
board meeting, we had a ton of people from other towns that didn't have to give their address, and is there different rules for different people? Like, I'm
Our
not trying
policy
to
is
be.
name and address.
I know, so why when other people didn't, is it called out? Okay. Christine Binder, 404 West Dudley Avenue. Last night I viewed a screening of a documentary titled, Whose Children Are They? This documentary was extremely powerful and featured brave teachers, empowered parents, and frontline experts and scholars who share what is truly happening in our public schools today. It calls on parents, teachers, and others to partner together for the innocence and well-being of our children. Rebecca Friedrichs, a producer on the project and a cast member, said, "This film will be the starting point for a full cultural conversation about the need to return to the original intent of education, not indoctrination." She goes on to say, if there is a silver lining in the COVID-19 crisis over the past 2 years, it's that the American parents have seen firsthand via the children's online classes how and what public schools are teaching. And they really delve into that sex ed curriculum, which was quite horrifying, especially for the little ones. Also mentioned in this film was how the number of reported students attending schools in the U.S. in 2020 and 2021 fell by 3%, according to the National Center for Education Statistics. I bring this up because after reviewing the Anti-Defamation League's No Place for Hate curriculum, I have a few questions. While I completely appreciate teaching students that hate, discrimination, or bigotry truly have no home in school or society, I do question the sincerity on whether or not this type of curriculum promotes such behavior. The definition of hate is to intensely or passionately dislike. The definition of discrimination is the unjust or prejudicial treatment of different categories of people or things. The definition of bigotry is a person who is obstinately or intolerantly devoted to his or her own opinions. And the definition of prejudice is liking or disliking for one rather than another. After going through the library and lesson plans in the No Place for Hate curriculum, I couldn't help but notice a political and biased agenda in some of the resources and lessons. Again, let me please be clear when I say that while I truly appreciate teachings that condone hate, discrimination, bigotry, and prejudice, and value literature that educates students on political figures such as MLK, Rosa Parks, and Harriet Tubman, what I don't appreciate is an obvious disregard to political figures of all
30
parties
seconds.
who too may have different political points of view. I noticed books about Kamala Harris, Hillary Clinton, Sonia Sotomayor, Michelle and Barack Obama, which is all completely fine. But if we really want a fair and balanced curriculum, shouldn't we see books from political figures such as Winsome Sears, Condoleezza Rice, Clarence Thomas, just people from other political views? I just would like to end with this. One of the speakers who was named was Bob
Thank you.
Woodward, an can I just finish the sentence? American
yes.
civil rights activist who headed the National Urban League Development, said in the documentary last night, and I thought this was powerful. He said, "Racism is a sin of the heart, not the melanin in one's skin." Thank you.
All right, seeing no other members of the public comment is now closed. Dr. Gonzalez, would you like to address any comments?
Sure. One of the questions was with regards to the need for additional sections, both of our RAP program as well as need to extend full-day K, and I would echo all of the above, that it's certainly something that I think every member of this board is equally concerned with, and will certainly continue to be part of the conversations. Unfortunately, we won't have a solution to that in the immediate future, but it continues to be part of the planning, future planning for this board and the administration. With regards to the health curriculum, I do want to reiterate that the resources, or the link to the resources that was included in the presentation last board meeting, was intended to provide access by members of the public to the resources that were made available by the Department of Education. But I do want to make sure it's clear they are not the resources that will be used as is, but they were provided by the Department of Education through the curriculum development. The teachers, the administrators will consider all of the resources that they have, but it doesn't mean that they're going to use them as they are presented. So I do want to make sure that the public comments that have been shared have been heard loud and clear, and we certainly will keep that in mind as we continue to refine our curricular documents.
On the sex ed curriculum updates, whenever they do come down through SIP to the board, sex ed is one of the very few things state law requires that we allow parents to opt out of. So when we do reintroduce that curriculum, we will reintroduce the mechanisms available to parents.
To opt out, correct?
Yes.
Correct, absolutely.
And I just wanted to clarify, if there was a miscommunication, I know that what many of the parents spoke about was from New Jersey, but there was a specific curriculum handed out that was not from New Jersey. It was a sample curriculum, and I've received a lot of questions about that. Just because it aligns with some of the New Jersey standards doesn't mean it's a curriculum that would be used or applied to meet those standards. So I just wanted to clarify that. So not so that you don't think that we were saying you weren't speaking the truth.
There was a board meeting in the fall where this was first raised to our attention, and a lot of the quotes were from a national group. Not specifically the board meeting, but other comments in the past have been from non-New Jersey sources. And I'll just address public comment. State law requires that we allow any member of the public pretty much deemed to be a resident of Earth to speak to the board on any matter tangentially related to the Board of Education. That's why we have a second public comment session where we've heard about fields, even though we're not voting on fields. We've heard about policies that people would like us to introduce that we're not voting on that day. The reason we have an earlier comment session is so that we can hear from you directly before we vote on something. That's where we can limit it to residents. We can limit it to people with a vested interest in the schools about things we're going to vote on. But at the end of the meeting, or at any point during the meeting, we have to allow the public to speak on anything related to the schools in Westfield or members of the Board of Education. Our policy does require that people state their name and address, and most people did. Last meeting, I think we were all overwhelmed with the sheer turnout, or the volume of people that chose to speak on a topic. I may not have completely enforced that rule uniformly, and if I did, I apologize. But our policy is name and address, and that's what I try to enforce every time. Any other comments from board members? And at the end of the meeting, we are all allowed to make statements about whatever. We generally don't, but we are elected to represent the taxpayers in Westfield, the parents in Westfield, the students in Westfield. And from time to time, we all do have something on our mind that we want to say, and that's what Sahar took her opportunity last week to exercise that. I may not have agreed with what she said, but it was her right to say it. And I hope if I have something controversial I want to get off my chest in a couple meetings, you guys all give me the same opportunity. I don't plan on doing that, but we all have that right. All right. And with that, ask the board to approve the following resolution. Resolved that the Board of Education move into private session for the purposes of discussing matters rendered confidential by state and federal law, including harassment, intimidation, and bullying incidents, and be it further resolved that any discussion held by the board which need not remain confidential, and the results of the discussion will be made public as soon as practicable. Can I have a second? Thank you, Amy. All in favor? Any opposed? We are adjourning to private session. We will not be coming back in public tonight.